Welcome to another edition of Bobcat Breakdown here on Q30 Television. I'm your host, Dylan Fearon, and tonight we have three very intelligent Quinnipiac sports analysts eager to discuss the past week of Quinnipiac athletics. A lot has happened recently involving the baseball, softball, and both lacrosse teams. So let's bring in our analysts. First, the one and only Nick Dench. Nick, how are you doing this evening?
Honored that I'm the one and only Nick Dench.
Also on tonight's show is Tom Cunningham. Tom, how are you doing?
I'm very excited to start my first show here tonight.
Great. And joining Nick and Tom is Tim Schultz. Tim, how have you been?
Dylan, I'm doing great, buddy. Great to be here.
Awesome. Let's get to it. The Quinnipiac baseball team has won 3 of its past 5 games and are currently 2-2 in the MAAC. The Bobcats stand at 5-15 overall in the season, but seem to be finding themselves in MAAC play. Guys, first question. What improvements have you seen from the Bobcats in the past week or so, and how far can they go in MAAC play? Keep in mind, Quinnipiac was picked last in the MAAC preseason poll. Nick, we'll go to you first.
I've seen them building defensively. They do have 22 errors in 20 games, but most of those errors came at Tennessee, against Duke, the higher-end teams. They're getting to the bottom-tier teams of their schedule now. They're starting to figure it out. Their hitting's been sporadic. Their extra base hitting has been awful this year. They have 39 extra base hits in 22 games, which is just inexcusable for a college baseball team. They have to build off Thomas Jenkins and Justin Thomas. If they can do that, I see them going a little higher than last in the conference, but I don't see them making the tournament.
You know, Nick, it's interesting you brought up the extra base hits. Not only that, Quinnipiac only has 1 home run this year in 20 games. That's pretty bad. And you brought up Jenkins and you also Justin Thomas. Those are 2 guys you can build this team around. But one's a freshman and one's a sophomore. And you've luckily got them for 1 for 2 more years, 1 for 3 more years. Now, obviously, this year it's a building year, which it's been for the last couple of years. But you have those guys for a couple more seasons where you can put together a nice pitching staff. Gary Binkowitz, in his 3 games that he's saved so far this year, he's gotten the job done. But overall, this team needs to improve big time. Whether it's offensively, they're only hitting .223 on the season. That's got to change if you want to win some ball games.
And like you guys said, the pitching staff's been one of the things to look at this season. Thomas Jenkins, it all started in MAAC play. Their first game at Manhattan, Jenkins threw 8 innings shutout with 10 Ks against the Jaspers. And then again last Saturday against Ryder, threw another 6 in the 3rd innings, only allowed 2 earned runs. So I think if you build upon him and Justin Thomas, like you guys have mentioned, they're going to be able to surprise some teams. I don't think they'll be getting much higher than maybe 7th, 8th in the league. A little bit better than what they're projected to finish, which was 11th, but still, I think this is a building year, like you said, and this team, they have some pieces to work around, especially in the pitching staff, that is going to help them.
Yeah, when you have a guy like Thomas Jenkins, young, really young freshman righty, and then you go to Justin Thomas, who's a lefty, that's a great 1-2 punch. Thomas has some experience at the college level. He pitched against Bryant last year, who made some noise in the NCAA tournament, actually beat Arkansas. So you have experience down there, even with the younger players. Gary Binkowitz is their captain, he's their closer, hard-throwing righty, that's huge for them. But then you look at everything else, their defense is awful. That's why they lost that game against Ryder on Saturday. You have Jenkins throw a gem and then 3 errors in 2 plays and they lose the game. You can't do that, especially with a young pitching staff. You got to save their arms. You have to find a way to win these games. And hitting, when you have a guy like Vin Galletti, who's supposed to be a very good power hitter, 7 doubles, he's one of the 3 highest batters on the team, but he's got to hit home runs. You can't have Rob Piscitelli as the only home run hitter so far.
Yeah, Nick, I mean, this team this year, like you said, offensively, they've really struggled. And when you look at the conference this year, Tom and Nick, both you guys, they still have some winnable games the rest of the year. They still play Niagara, they still play Iona, they still play St. Peter's. And those are teams that have really, like the Bobcats, have struggled this year. And overall, the MAAC has been very disappointing baseball-wise this year. So they can make their ways up the standings. Obviously, they're projected to finish in last. But I don't think they're going to finish last. I think they're going to work their way up in the standings, maybe to 8, maybe to 9. We'll see how the season goes on.
I think someone else we got to look at is Scott Donahue, who last season hit .283 for the Bobcats. This year, only hitting .231. He's going to have to pick up his production if this team wants to continue to win games. They're getting great starting pitching. Also, Matthew Osasia threw 3 1/3 shutout against Manhattan in the first conference victory. So they're getting quality pitching performances, but with this team hitting only around .220 as a team, they're going to have to get more production from the lineup.
Well, Tim and Tom, you both said around 7th, 8th, or 9th that they're going to finish in the MAAC. But Nick, what are you thinking right now? Are you thinking, can they finish 5th or 6th? Is there a chance?
No, I don't see it. Their defense is too sporadic. Their hitting is way too sporadic. is you'll see them get games 13, 14, 15 hits, and then you see Saturday they had 2. So they need to figure that out. Their pitching's still a little too young. I think next year you might see them higher up in that standings, but this year I'm seeing 9, 10 maybe.
All right, guys, moving from baseball to softball, Jill Karwoski's team is in a bit of a slump. Bobcats have lost 2 in a row and 8 of 9, including an 0-run record in the MAAC. Guys, what has the Bobcats slumping in recent weeks? Is it the hitting, the pitching, or just a slew of issues? Tim, we'll start with you.
Honestly, I think the thing that's been the biggest issue with the Bobcats softball team has just been the inexperience. You look at this roster, of the 17 players, you only have 5 juniors or seniors on the team. Now, they did just add Ashley Winslow from the hockey team, but this team's very young, and I don't think it's so much that they've struggled because of they're not talented, they're just inexperienced, and that's going to go up as the season goes along. And to go along with that as well, they've only played, 1 game in the MAAC so far this year, so there's still time to grow as this goes along. And they played a lot of very talented teams in the tournaments that were in earlier this season. So I think they're going to go up as well. And don't forget, Jill Karwoski, it's her first full year as head coach, so she's going to be learning things as the season goes along as well.
I think it's a whole bunch of different things going wrong with this team right now. You mentioned the inexperience, but I think the biggest thing right now is the starting pitching for this team, or just the pitching staff as a whole. They have a 6.6 ERA between the 3 pitchers, which is Sydney Roby, Katie Alfieri, and Hannah Lindsley. They've got to start picking it up a little bit. Courtney Solt is one of the only hitters above 300 right now. So they got 3 hitters above 300. So their offense is it's there, but I think the pitching staff is the main thing this team needs to focus on right now.
I think it's a slew of issues. You look at the pitching staff you mentioned, Roby, Lindsley, and Alfieri. Alfieri's the worst of the 3 pitchers, and she's the most experienced. She needs to play better, pitch better as the leader of that pitching staff. Sydney Roby's been the best all-around player. She's not only the best pitcher with a 5.11 ERA, but she also leads the team in home runs. You can't have your starting pitcher also lead the team in home runs, especially on a team with Jordan Palucci on the team. She needs to step up. I don't expect her to play that way all season. You know she's going to do well at some point offensively. But Sydney Roby can't be the team leader in home runs, the team leader in ERA, and one of the top 3 in steals as well.
You know, Nick, I think you brought up Katie Alfieri, and I think she's the X factor for this team because, like you said, she's really struggled. She's pitching to almost a 12 ERA this year, and she's given up 40 runs so far in her 11 starts. That's not going to get the job done. So she's going to have to improve as this season goes along for Quinnipiac.
Well, guys, excuse me, Tom. You're seeing they have 4 batters that are hitting above 285 this year, and all 3 pitchers have an ERA above 5. Tom, is that what you've been seeing too?
Yeah, I mean, you've said they've got 4 hitters above 280, which that's solid for them to compete in this conference. I think 4 batters above 280 they're going to get the job done. It would put them right in the middle of the pack, I think. But this starting rotation is struggling a lot. Alfieri, like Tim said, around an 11 ERA. That's just not going to get it done. And the staff as a whole with a 6.6 ERA.
Yeah, the 6.6 ERA is concerning in itself. When the team's not even averaging 3 runs a game, that's a big, big differential. You can't have a 4-run differential and expect to win any games. So this team batting .231 as a team. You have 4 players over 280. Everybody else is under 200. So you need to figure that out. Find a way to get players on base, maybe even play small ball. That's what I like the baseball team to do, but the softball team might have to resort to small ball at this point.
All right, thanks, guys. We're going to step aside for a minute, but when we come back, Tom Cunningham will sit down with women's head lacrosse coach Danie Caro. Stay tuned.
Bobcat Shop, located at 1010 Sherman Avenue in Hamden. Your #1 choice for Bobcat merchandise. The Bobcat Shop features 2 floors of countless styles and colors. With a full 19,000 square foot screen printing and embroidery operation on the premises, Campus Customs and Simplify can design and decorate any garment or promotional product as quickly as needed. Stop in and say hi.
Back to Bobcat Breakdown. I'm joined now by Quinnipiac women's lacrosse coach Danie Caro. Coach, how you doing tonight?
Pretty good, thank you.
So this Saturday, you guys got your first victory in the MAAC against Manhattan. How did it feel to finally get that first win of the season, especially in the MAAC?
I think it was awesome. It was a great feeling, and after the game, we asked the kids if they enjoyed that feeling, and they said yes. So hopefully, it's a good motivator to keep that feeling alive. I mean, we had a tough preseason. Obviously, our record speaks for itself. We took a lot of lumps, but as the non-conference season has progressed, we've been getting steadily better and better, and so it was great to finally be able to put a full game together. And even though we didn't play our best, we really showed a desire to win, and they gutted out a tough one. Real proud of them.
And how much of a morale booster was it for the team after you go up early in that game? Manhattan came and fought back and then took the lead, and then you get that go-ahead goal with just over 2 minutes left.
I think it was really great. I mean, we weren't sure how that was going to play out. It ended up being one of our freshmen, Devin Kelly, that took advantage of an opportunity when their goalie came out and was able to have the poise to wrap the crease and put it in the empty net. So it ended up being, great for us. We had lost the next draw and ended up having a great defensive stand, came up with a big save by Sam Tiltz and took some time off the clock, got the ball into our offensive end, and then we're pretty much ready to hold the ball and play for the win. But it was really nice to be able to come from behind, to know that even if we get down a little bit, we've got the guts to kind of come back and not roll over.
And what sort of adjustments have you had to make moving from the NEC last year into the MAAC this year?
Well, I think for us, we knew it was a much higher rated conference in terms of the RPI, so we really challenged ourselves with our non-conference schedule. And we, like I said, played a lot of tough teams. We've had some injuries early on that have really hampered our progress, but we're starting to get some people back. And we've tried to change our style a little bit, play a little more aggressive on defense, a little more conservative on the offense. And like I said, against Manhattan, we put it all together, and we played a pretty complete 60-minute game. So we were pretty happy with where we are right now.
You got a newcomer to the team this year, Kelly Babstock. What sort of things has she added to the team with 6 goals in her first 3 games?
I think Kelly's just an intense competitor. I mean, she is fierce on the field. You've seen her play hockey for 4 years, and she kind of brings the same kind of intensity to the lacrosse field. And so when we look at her, every time she touches the ball, something's going to happen. It might be a disaster, but more than likely it's going to be a great play. And she's really trying to set up her teammates and make plays, and she's skilled enough that if she can't set somebody else up, she can take it herself. So, she doesn't have the assist yet, but she had a couple of near ones where her teammates just didn't finish the shot, but she's making plays for us. That's what we expect from her. And, as she gets more comfortable in our system, I think you'll see her really be able to dominate games for us. And that's something that is a little bit of an X factor for us, because I think a lot of people aren't expecting her since this is her first year.
As the season goes on and she gets more comfortable in the system, how do you expect her to be able to work with players like Kira Aquat and Michaela Tinsley on the offensive end?
I think she's already working with them pretty well. I mean, we see a lot more success in practice, obviously, because they're getting a lot more reps. We haven't seen as much in the games in terms of the connections with the feeding, but she's doing it in practice. Mickey's been a little hurt. Kelly herself has been a little bit hurt. So I think when we get them back to full strength, you'll start to see those connections.
Kira Aquat, 29 points, 21 goals, and 8 assists so far this season. How has she been able to play at such a high level?
She's played really great for us in almost all of our games. She's had some ups and downs. There's always going to be some inconsistency. She obviously is always going to draw our opponent's top defender. So I give her a lot of credit being able to keep her cool. She gets fouled a lot. She gets double teamed a lot. But she's just an incredibly talented player. She really has a strong work ethic, and she's been doing a lot of the things that don't show up in the stat sheets, which is really what we've been trying to work with her on. So she's been a very important factor in our ride. She's causing turnovers, she's getting ground balls, she's calming down the younger players on attack. So she's really doing a little bit of everything for us, and we're pleased with her development. We just know that we need to make sure we have some other options so that people can't focus on just Kira.
And now you're in your first season in the MAAC. What sort of things do you look to gain through these next couple of games as you move forward, not for the rest of this season, but even going into next season?
Well, I think for us, just getting that familiarity with our opponents. I mean, being in the NEC for so many years, we obviously knew each year there wasn't going to be a lot of changes from, year to year. So now that we're in the MAAC, it's all completely new. So we just need to get familiar with what to expect, how teams in the MAAC play, and how we can match up against them and have a good game plan to be able to give us an opportunity to compete.
All right, Coach, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll be right back here on Bobcat Breakdown.
I could really go for a Ray and Mike sub right now.
Come to Ray and Mike's and try our Philly chicken with cheese for just over $4, giant cheesesteak subs, and mouth-watering boar's head sandwiches for as low as $4.75. Q-Cash accepted just a mile down the road on Whitney, here at Ray and Mike's.
Welcome back to Bobcat Breakdown. The men's lacrosse team is 3-4 this season and have won 2 out of their last 3 contests. Guys, what have you seen from the Bobcats this season, and what should we expect from them in the coming weeks? Tom.
I think they're starting to find their own in the MAAC right now. They got a big overtime win, 10-9 against Detroit. They were actually ranked 8th in the New England Intercollegiate Lacrosse Association poll this week. And I think Gil Connors in net for the Bobcats is going to be the big X factor this season. He's got about an 8 goals against average so far this season. I think he needs to work on that in order to propel them into the MAAC tournament. But I think so far they've been playing pretty well, and they're starting to find their own and get going.
You know, Tom, the one person you didn't mention was Michael Sagal, and he's been pretty quiet so far this year. Sagal, who led the team in goals and points last year, he only has 9 goals so far. Now, that's pretty good, but the Bobcats are going to need a lot more scoring-wise from Michael Sagal if they want to be a competitive team this year. Now, they are 3-4 so far. They play Stony Brook tonight at 7 o'clock on the road, so that's another very tough game that they've got to go up on the road. But Michael Sagal's a guy that he's going to have to put the team on his back and carry them the rest of this year. Dylan Webster's done a very nice job, but overall, he's going to have to do more for this team.
Sagal's been real good, and you know what I like from him? He knows that the other teams are keying in on his goal-scoring ability, so he's passing it now. He still leads the team in points, but he's got 9 goals and 12 assists. He's setting up Dylan Webster and Ryan Keenan. That's huge for them. They have 2 other scoring threats now. Pat Corcoran's no slouch himself. So this is a team that can rely on Sagal to score if they really need it. But now they have Webster, who's proven himself over the last 3 years he can score, Ryan Keenan and Pat Corcoran as well. But an 8 goals against, and especially in lacrosse for Connors, that's outstanding. This is not hockey where if you're giving up more than 2.5, it's bad. 8 is good. If you're giving up 10, 12, that's bad. Connors is the reason this team is going to win games.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Connors right there, and you know he's been fantastic for this team this year. But a big thing that nobody's mentioned so far, they still have 3 home conference games the rest of this year. They've played a ton of road games, so they're going to have that home field advantage the rest of this season, which is going to be big. They still have those 3 conference games, and a lot of the rest of the conference, they're going to have to come and take on the Bobcats right here at Quinnipiac.
I think something else you guys haven't mentioned so far is Zach Vihar. He's won 55% of his faceoffs this season, and I think that's going to play a huge part in it because if he's able to win those faceoffs, then he's able to get the Bobcats will have possession and they're able to set up those attackers like you mentioned, Webster and Sagal.
Vihar gives the Bobcats something they haven't had the last few years. Dylan Webster has been the face-off guy for this team the last few years. Now they're making him a specific attack player. Vihar has turned into what lacrosse players like to call a FOGO, which is face-off and go. They are literally there just to take face-offs, and then they get off the field regardless of how they do. So when they do that, it gives Webster more time to rest his legs so he's not in that awkward crouching position. But the way their schedule's set up, Tim, they have those 3 home games, and then they play Yale and Air Force. So they end the season with 2 very difficult non-conference games, which can definitely help them if they do make the MAAC tournament.
Yeah, you know, Nick, you mentioned that too. And the one thing last year that was tough for them is that they had to go on the road to Air Force. That's a long flight. And not only the long flight, it's very tough to adjust to that climate out there with the thinner air. So you're running up and down the field. It's going to be tougher on your lungs playing like that. This year they have them at home, so that may be a big advantage for them in the rest of the season.
All right, guys, we'll talk more about the men's team in just a few moments. But the women's lacrosse team won their first game of the season on Saturday, defeating Manhattan 12-11. Senior attack Kelly Babstock had 4 goals, and that puts her tally at 6 goals in 3 games this season. Gentlemen, what has Babstock brought to the team in the past 3 games, and how far can she lead this Bobcat team?
She's brought energy to this team, and they looked dead before Babstock finished her hockey career and came over to the lacrosse team. She had a game off because she had to learn the system, but she brings a lot of energy to this team. She played at men's lacrosse in Canada. The national sport of Canada is lacrosse, contrary to popular belief. So she knows how to play men's lacrosse, so she's playing a little more physically with a little more speed against these women's players, and she knows how to get to the net. She's playing with purpose, and she's setting up other players when she needs to.
You know, Nick, the biggest thing is that she's taking a lot of the slack off of Kira Aquad. Kelly's played 3 games for Quinnipiac, and she's already scored 6 goals, and Kira Aquad so far this year already has 9 goals. So that's a big thing, and she brings that leadership being a senior, so that's going to be a big help for this team the rest of this year.
She's also brought this sort of competitive edge that she brought over from the hockey team. Being nationally ranked in the hockey team, she has this competitive and this intensity to her that she's been able to bring over and translate into the lacrosse field. A very short turnaround for her. I'm very impressed. She's got 6 goals in 3 games. I think she is really opening the field up for the rest of these players.
And teams are going to start keying in on her. They're going to see, hey, this girl played women's hockey, but clearly she's a really good lacrosse player as well. So they're going to have to start keying on her. It might open up the field for Michaela Tinsley, who last year was second on the team with 36 goals. This year she only has 9. So maybe it's because they don't have Sarah Allen, but now they have that facilitator in Babstock who might open up the field for Tinsley again.
Well, guys, now that she is a focal point, has a focal role on this team, how far can Quinnipiac go?
I still not really. I can't really see them going very far. They just won their first game of the season this past Saturday. Maybe they'll have a more high-powered offense with Babstock and Tinsley and Aquat, but I still can't see them going very far in the MAAC this season.
Yeah, you know, Tom, the biggest thing for them is depth, and you hit the nail on the head. This team does not have a lot of depth, and that's the reason why they're in this big hole so far this year, just picking up their first win. And it's been a struggle this year, but it's a younger team, and they're going to build. They're going to get stronger with more experience in these games. May not be this year, but next year may be the year for them in the MAAC.
And as much as Babstock does on the offensive end, lacrosse is a sport where the attack is not allowed to go past a certain point on the field. So she can't play defense like she could in hockey. And their defense really not that strong. Samantha Tiltz in net is not a very good goaltender, as opposed to the men's team, as Gil Connors. So they need, if they're going to make any noise in the MAAC, they're going to need to find a way to win their draws, which they've also struggled with, and getting the ball up and maintaining possession of the game. I don't see them doing that. I don't see them making the postseason at all.
Okay, guys, now we're going to do a little buy or sell, a very popular segment on Bobcat Breakdown. I will read out a statement, and you'll either have to buy it or sell it. First one, the men's lacrosse team will make the MAAC tournament semifinals. Tom, you first.
I'm going to buy that. The way Connors is playing right now, they'll be able to get the balanced offensive attack from those 4 players we mentioned earlier. I'm going to buy it. I think they just beat Detroit, who was one of the top teams in the conference, so I think they have enough in them to get to the semifinals of the MAAC this season.
I'm going to sell it. As much as Connors can do for them, as much as Sagal, Webster, and Keenan can do for them, I think Vihar is a liability on the draws. We saw last year Bryant put up a fight against Syracuse, nationally ranked Syracuse, because their face-off guy was extremely good. He was the best in the country, and he was winning all the face-offs. When you have a guy like Vihar who's only winning 55%, they're not going to have a lot of ball possession, and I don't think that with that minimal ball possession, they can continue to win. There's going to be a lot of shots on Connors, and it gives the Bobcats a little bit of a disadvantage.
Nick, I'm going to disagree with you. I'm absolutely going to make this purchase because I don't trust the rest of the teams in the MAAC outside of Siena. Siena is the lead dog in this conference, but you look at it, Detroit, who was projected to finish second in the preseason poll, Quinnipiac took care of them on the road, so that's a big win for the Bobcats there. And I don't trust Canisius either. They've really struggled at points this year. And in total, the MAAC, like the women's conference, it just really has not been a strong conference this year. So Quinnipiac has a shot. Can they beat Siena? In my opinion, no. But they have a shot to potentially even play them in the finals if they can make it through the semifinals.
It's a team last year, but they could not close games out. The last 3 games of the year, with experience in Basil Kostaris and Jay Binkowski, they had 6-7 goal leads and they blew it. They did it in the NEC semifinals against Robert Morris, and that's why they didn't play against Bryant, the game that I don't think they would have won anyway. But that's why they didn't beat Bryant or beat Robert Morris in the NEC semifinals. The MAAC is a better lacrosse conference outside of Bryant than the NEC is.
Nick, I understand your point with that, but I still think if you have Gil Connors as your goaltender, you can win any game right now, regardless of who you're playing in the MAAC. That's just my opinion with that right there. Okay,
guys, next one. The baseball team will have more than 15 wins this season. Nick, we'll start with you.
I'm going to sell this. This baseball team is just not very good. We hit on it earlier. Their hitting's all over the place. Their fielding will lose them games. It lost them a game this past weekend. And their starting pitching is really the only consistent part. So if this team, bad pitching, or really good pitching, bad fielding, bad hitting, you can't really rely on 1 out of 3 aspects of the game.
I'm going to buy that one as well. Their starting pitching has proven they can win them some games. They've got about 25 games left this season. I think they'll be able to win 10 games, especially in Coach Gooley's last season. I think they're going to want to play well for him as they're down the stretch of the season.
If I had stock in the Quinnipiac baseball team, I would sell as soon as I could because I don't see them winning more than 10 games at this rate this year. The team has some talent there, right there, but they've really struggled this year. Like Nick said, I did the game on Saturday for QBSN, and they threw the ball all over the diamond. They can't hit. Their average is a 223 team average. They only have 3 players above 240, which is saying something. And their bullpen, outside of Gary Binkowitz and Matt Osishev, really has not been much better to go along with the rest of their pitching. I don't even know if they're going to finish with more than 10 wins, let alone 15.
All right, so we got 2 people selling that, and Tom's buying. Next one. Kira Akwat will have over 55 points at the end of the women's lacrosse season. Akwat currently has 29 points in 8 games. Tim, are you buying that or selling that one?
You know what? I'm going to sell that because I think Kelly Babstock, not so much because Kira Akwat can't get that many points or goals. I just think Kelly Babstock is going to take a lot of the load off her shoulders and is going to be a big impact player for the Bobcats the rest of the season. Kira Akwat's had a great year, but Kelly's going to do a lot of things to take that pressure off of her shoulders.
I am also going to sell that one. Kira Aqua is playing at a very high level right now. She's got 29 points. She needs 26 more in 7 games. I just can't see her. She's obviously good enough to do it, but with now the more balanced attack on offense, I just can't see her staying at that high of a level scoring.
See, I'm going to buy it. If I have another player who can score like Kelly Babstock, that takes maybe the goals out of Aquat's production, but it adds assists. And it takes pressure off of Akwat to be the only offensive player on this team. She knows that now that she has another player like Kelly Babstock who can do the scoring, teams are going to start shifting their focus away from her, putting it a little bit more on Tinsley when she gets healthy and starts playing better. And Babstock, now Akwat's field's going to be open, and it's going to be a lot easier for her to get those points, especially when you have teams that don't know who to cover anymore.
Tim, what do you think about what Nick just said?
You know, I mean, you could make any case you want. I wouldn't be surprised if she did finish with that many points, but I just think that with the addition of Kelly Babstock, that's just a huge added bonus for this team. And they'll improve. I think they're going to pick up more wins as the season goes along. They still have the entire conference slate left to play. So we'll see. I still think she falls a little bit short. That doesn't mean she can't do it. I just think she'll be short.
All right, guys, last one. The softball team will win 7 games or more in MAAC play. Tom, we'll go to you first.
I'm going to sell that one. We've talked about it earlier. This team has a whole slew of issues right now with the ERA, the hitting not being there, the fielding not being there. I just can't see them getting 6 more wins in the conference this season.
I'm going to buy it. Jordan Palucci's been cold all season. Maybe with the weather warming up, she's going to warm up. She's the all-time leading home runs and RBI leader at this program. And there's no way she's going to be content with having 3 home runs and letting Sydney Roby, a pitcher, out-hit her at both power-wise and average-wise. I don't think Jordan Palucci's going to let it happen, and Sydney Roby's letting last year's aspect of pitching in college play better this year.
Yeah, I'm going to buy that as well. This team's gotten off to such a bad start, but like which I've said before with men's and women's lacrosse, the MAAC really overall has not been that strong in softball either. The one conference that has been okay is baseball. Softball, they've not been great. This team's going to get better, and I can't, in addition to Jordan Palucci, I can't see Katie Alfieri finishing the season with an 11 ERA. She's pitched much better like that. Last year, she pitched very well. I can't see her finishing with that high of an ERA.
All right, guys, well, it's shaping up to be a very exciting spring sports season. Thank you for watching another edition of Bobcat Breakdown. For Nick Dench, Tom Cunningham, and Tim Schultz, I'm your host, Dylan Fearon. Have a great night.